Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Hey, it's PVSB. This is a special conversation of the CPG Guys. I am here in person with the legendary Bryan Gildenberg.
Is there a legendary person coming?
Well, you're legendary because you do hold the record, as we discussed earlier, for the most appearances on the CPG Guys podcast.
That's true.
So that alone makes you legend. Wait for it, dairy.
I'm a legend in your own mind.
Yeah, I'm a legend in mine. Anyhow, so Bryan and I are in New York City because we have spent the day over at NRF Big Show. And something we'll talk about a little bit later, but one of the reasons I wanted to get together with Bryan was he was brave enough, intrepid enough. We'll go with intrepid enough. Yeah. Bryan was intrepid enough to head out to Las Vegas first week of January to attend the Consumer Electronics Show. I think it's the artist formerly known as the Consumer Electronics Show. I think it's just CES now.
Yes, yeah. I think they went to just solely acronym. There's going to be a symbol next year.
So, okay, very good. So what I wanted to do was just open up and let Bryan wax philosophically about CES. Bryan, what first of all, obviously a lot of the big brands pulled out at the last minute, and
right.
So there weren't some of those anchor brands that you're really familiar with. Was that noticeable? What was your perception of both the feel and the attendance of the show?
And just for perspective, because I know there's a number of people that listen to this podcast that are CES veterans. I'm not. This was the first and only time I've ever been. So I don't have a lot to benchmark it against necessarily, except for the other people say, wow, this is really empty. I think there were parts of that experience, which we'll come back to, which were actually really good, and that you could actually move and not bump into everybody and actually talk to the people who are running booths and stuff like that, which from what I hear is unusual at CES. And then what I tried to do, mostly, as you saw today when we were walking in our office, I tried to gravitate away from some of the more easily accessible virtually stuff. So I didn't spend a lot of time with the cool new cars or the cool new TVs, just because I could go online and look at all that stuff. So, and besides this, the Samsung booth, which was the size of a small city, you had to register to get into, and I just forgot to do that.
I'd love to hear from you. If you were avoiding them, I'd love to hear the ones that you were gravitating towards. And from that, what were 3 or 4 that really stood out to you that are particularly applicable in the consumer packaged goods retail world?
Yes, well, I ended up looking at a bunch of different things. A lot of it was related to measurement in some way, shape, or form. The ability to measure literally anything. Mm-hmm. So you can measure small variations in your mental state. Like you can put on an Oculus, and you can there's this company called Helium that you can put on an Oculus, and it would measure your flow state. So you try to get yourself into a flow state, and if you didn't get yourself into a flow state, a giant panther came out, and if you did, the panther laid down and licked its paw.
Lovely.
That was kind of interesting. You could measure. There were 59,000 different ways to measure traffic patterns in a city, all of which I think would be applicable to a retail store. Mm-hmm. Like in being able to measure traffic flow and things like that through stores more easily.
I think of the old the Spectrum is the one I was thinking.
Well, Sorensen was the one that I used to work with at Kantar, and they put the RFID things in the shopping carts. Yeah,
tracking the heat mapping the store.
Yeah, well, now you can do that with relatively low capital investment in real time. Yep. You can. So one company where which is going to be could revolutionize the physical therapy industry, because after knee surgery, they can put inserts in your shoes and do gait analysis, so GAIT analysis, where they can measure how you walk and then beam that data directly back to your PT, who doesn't have to watch you in an artificial setting walk, but knows how you're actually walking.
So they can diagnose you and put together a treatment plan remotely without even having to sit there and observe you.
Yeah, so basically, I think the thing is that if you Moore's Law this stuff 1 or 2 more times, you're going to be able to measure anything. You're going to be able to know anything. And I think that's the world we're headed towards. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because for so long, and Peter, you and I have been around this industry for a while, and if we just had better data, we'd be able to do this or that. That is simply not going to be an excuse for anything in the future. You're going to have the data to do whatever you want. The real question is going to be then, what do you do with that data? And data science is a often misused term because data science tends to way over concentrate on data. And I think the next couple of years are going to be where data science really has to concentrate on science.
I think there are a lot in my talking to brands. That's actually that's the crux. There's so much data coming at them now that they just don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So if you don't have mechanisms in place to actually ingest and analyze, synthesize, and distribute meaningful insights that lead to actions, you're just filling your cloud server with a whole bunch of data that you're never going to look at.
Right, and I think this is the other big piece, because there were two areas that I thought were most interesting here. One of which was around, I'll use an old term for this, though this is basically the whole app ecosystem, is middleware. Like the middleware between granular data and basically human decisions around capital allocation is really all middleware. And so there's a gazillion apps that do point-specific things, but all those apps really do at their core is they take granular data and aggregate it into something you could then make a decision about, and that decision has some sort of meaning to either a consumer or to a business. So that's control and understanding of that ecosystem is going to be absolutely critical for a big CPG company in the future, because you're right, there's no way these companies are going to be able to build the analytic capabilities to be able to do all the stuff themselves. So they're going to have to really pick the right partners, right?
So data management and analytics and the ability to digest that and make sense of it. Big theme that you saw where they're particular. You gave a couple examples. What would be some other areas that you thought
healthcare is massive. So
so
the data ecosystem around healthcare, which we all know because we all carry around these monitoring devices that we have 24/7. But there are easy techniques to monitor the air quality in your home. There's 3,000 techniques to monitor the quality of your sleep. There's things that monitor the quality of what comes out of you in the bath. Just everything, right? So that data, between that data and the 1974 era capital allocation model of the American healthcare industry, there's so much opportunity for figuring out what the consumer use cases are that exist outside of that health ecosystem, and how do you do that?
One area that I've seen some tremendous growth in over the last few years in terms of health monitoring is actually for caregivers of adult parents, particularly ones that suffer from dementia. I did some, the transparency, I did some due diligence on this industry for one of my friends who's a venture capitalist in a company that he invested in. So I was looking at what really existed maybe 2 years ago, and it was pretty slim pickings. What they had didn't do much. It didn't really, unless you had some kind of geofencing capability, it didn't really do anything meaningful. And what I've seen just in the last year develop on tracking capabilities that have the gyroscope type of capability that's embedded in your phone to understand, are they lying down, are they in their bed, not just are they in a general perimeter. I think it has revolutionized how caregivers can feel more comfortable about the people that they are looking after, particularly when they are in assisted living conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna be able to have pill boxes that monitor whether the pills have been consumed, and not just whether they've been taken out of the pill box, whether they've been consumed. You're gonna have all of the stuff that enables remote management. Remote management of older loved ones is just a massive growth case for that. And it's funny because in a retail level, although you've got so many retailers in the CPG world that care about health and wellness, I think the retailer that's leaned in on health technology more than any other one is probably Best Buy.
Interesting. Do tell.
I think Best Buy's put a lot, knowing that they're kind of the place where you go to get the technological solutions for some of this, and that they're trying to help the app providers, the Googles, the Samsungs, amplify their capability there. You've seen them really make some significant investments in home healthcare assistance and pieces like that. So I think the blurring here isn't just between retail and healthcare, but between consumer packaged goods and consumer electronics. As every consumer packaged good starts to have an electronic component to it, you're going to start to get to that an interesting blurring of the lines there.
The whole expansion that Best Buy has experienced in terms of wearables and the different verticals that's going into is absolutely fascinating.
Well, that's the other thing. They have a home game on the underlying physical infrastructure for this, which gives them an opportunity to start to penetrate some of this middleware software app system.
So the gateway is they buy the device, and where they make their long-term money is on the subscription of the connectivity of that device to monitor.
It's the Geek Squad for healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So how do I help you do that? I think the other big analytic area, and this is a buzzword that I think people are going to hear a lot more over the next couple of years, if not familiar with this term, which I really wasn't before I got to CES because I'm old, is twinning.
Twinning. Isn't that when my wife and my daughter try to look dressed the same?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That is precisely what that is. And the less we know about your house, sometimes the better I feel like.
There we go.
But I think in general, no, twinning is where you're able to take all of that data and to build an extraordinarily complex model that is where you can project the impact of relatively complex causal variables on that model. And you can do this for the human heart. This is actually how the COVID-19 vaccine was developed. They twinned,
of course,
they twinned the human cell and were able to figure out what the spike protein was that drove that.
And they were able to do that in a time frame that was exponentially shorter.
Yes, because you could test hundreds of thousands of
at
variations.
the same time.
Yes, you got it. And you can twin a city. And you could certainly twin a retail store or an e-commerce.
Is that like Minneapolis and St. Paul?
Exactly like that as
See,
well.
I want the audience to know that I am connecting the dots.
You really are. You're making it happen. It's Dallas-Fort Worth, too. Yeah.
That one. Oh, that is a good one, too.
DFW. Yeah, so not DSW.
But they're not known as the Twin Cities, unlike...
No, and DSW, though, twins the right shoe and the left shoe.
Oh, together. DFW, that's right. Yeah, See, I got that wrong, too.
Yeah, no, anyway, but this twinning capability, what it's going to allow from an analytics point of view is just, it's going to be way easier to model things that used to be beyond the capability of analytics teams to model before. Like basically, so if I put an end cap in a store location, it's going to be really simple to figure out not just what happens to that end cap from a performance point of view, but how that's going to change traffic and store flow vis-a-vis another end cap. So retailers in 2 or 3 years are going to be able to evaluate displays not just on their sales performance, but on their traffic flow performance.
So they could theoretically use that to decide
and be able to predict
if I want to drive people in a certain direction in the store.
Yes.
This is the order in which I should put the end caps to drive the flow.
My organic beauty section is behind this end cap, which typically has pancake mix on it, right? Just because my store's laid out weird. I know which pancake mix is most likely to draw traffic that is most likely to convert to the organic beauty section. I'll be able to model that really easily.
Isn't that great? Because you understand the affinities of the different products, the lifestyles based upon their behavioral shopping.
Right.
And you're able to say, put this near
and
that.
this will flow the traffic.
If not just, I can choose a product that is a high volume selling product to be on the end.
Right.
That's what they normally do. It is, I will this one may not sell in gross as much as item B, but item A will have a direct relevance to the product that's in aisle right next to it, and that's where I'm going to make my margin.
And like all of these things, you're often not going to know why it works, you just know that it will work. Like anybody who's ever done A/B testing for a living knows that why is one of the least important questions.
Just make sure, if it works.
High velocity A/B testing, you're like, okay, that worked, I'll do this.
If it works, scale.
And then you learn later why it all happened. So, and that's, I think, whereas so often in physical retail today, you start with a theory of the case and then heavy-handedly test it and stuff. You're just going to not have to do that. You'll be able to do that in an analytic model rather than in a physical.
This is fascinating because then I just see retail promotion teams that would meet every week to decide what's going on promotion. This is going to dramatically reduce the amount of effort on their part. It'll choose the items and it will choose the placement.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is this basically what the world is, and you're old enough to remember Mr. Bruner from Walgreens, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's replicating. Vern knew all this stuff at Walgreens and would do all of this just in his head. So we have finally, after 30 years, built technology that
we put him into an AI bot
that replicates what was in Vern Bruner's head the whole time. So I think that's great. So.
It's kind of like that doctor in Captain America. They code it into the
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I love to go down these rabbit holes, people. I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he's found a fellow rabbit here. So exactly. Sadly, Shree's
Hail
not
Hydra.
here.
Sorry,
Shree's not here to keep us on task.
I know he would just shake his head and Peter. Yes. I need to move along.
Yes. What we really need to know is.
Anyhow, okay. So what were some of the things that really surprised you from CES?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and they'll be related to the metaverse. So for those of you that had 14 minutes and 49 seconds on metaverse being mentioned in the CES conversation, you win the over/under. Look, I think the metaverse was surprising in a couple of ways. Yeah. One of which is, candidly, how what I might charitably call how little progress has been made in the world of virtual reality shopping. Many of you know me from my old days at Kantar, and many of you know that for years Kantar owned a virtual reality software business that we used for testing. I went right to the source. I went right to Korea, and the Latte, not Latte the drink, but Latte the Korean hypermarket.
Yes. Went
to their virtual reality store. If somebody's got the code cracked on this stuff, it's these guys. And look, they could not have been nicer. Wonderful people, and the quality of the visual rendering in it is remarkable. It just doesn't do anything particularly well. It's still a pretty clunky way to accomplish things that you could physically accomplish just much more easily, right? But that's years to come. That's going to Moore's Law a couple of times, and we'll see where we are after 3 years of, tons of investment and tons of iteration. It'll get better.
So meta.
It's but the other big one I think in the metaverse though that is more interesting are some of the nearer in applications of things like blockchain technology, particularly in the worlds around art, around entertainment, around creativity. And not only if you're in that business, this is going to fundamentally change how creators monetize their creations, but as I've observed a few times, if the monetization of creativity changes, then advertising changes. It has to, because advertising is one of the ways in which you monetize creativity. It's part of that ecosystem. Obviously, I care a lot about how advertising changes now because I work for an ad agency, but also in general, I think that brands are going to have to be hyper aware of how fame, scarcity, and exclusivity and status all change as a result of being able to create unique digitally identifiable copies. And that's just going to change a lot about how we think about how we engage consumers, particularly for brands that are trying to establish exclusivity, a premium status, or uniqueness.
Sounds like you're talking NFTs.
Yes, that is.
We're talking on Shree's current obsession.
Yes, well, and look, I mean, I think there's as pessimistic as I am about some things like, I don't know, crypto payments for coffee, because that just doesn't really solve a user problem. But I'm really quite convinced that the use cases around NFTs in anything, basically NFTs solve a couple of problems. In the digital world, you have zero marginal cost, you have no scarcity, and you've got a high propensity for fakery.
Yeah.
Right. NFTs are ideally designed to solve those problems.
Right.
So in the same way that Amazon grew up in books because the book industry was screwed up 6 ways from Sunday, and Amazon was a very logical way to fix some of the economics of the book industry, so it got root there and grew. NFTs are a very logical way to solve the problem of monetizing creative assets in the digital world, and I think they'll grow there, and then you'll see them move out from there.
Brands have just started dabbling. I saw some, and it usually seems to be luxury high-end goods so far. I saw some Mondavi wines over the holidays. What are you, just spitballing, what are you seeing NFTs doing for brands in 2022? In
2022, I think you're going to see brands start to experiment with where it is important to the brand to influence the group of people that make taste or the group of people that want to follow people that make taste. Yeah. So the sort of the apex of the taste making pyramid, and those aren't always necessarily brands that are high end. Like, if you're trying to follow the high end gamers, as a for instance, which is a huge audience for this. I mean, if I'm a brand like Mountain Dew, I've got to go where serious gamers are going. Yep. Serious gamers and Web 3.0 addicts are a pretty close overlapping Venn diagram. So I'm going to have to follow them into that world, figure out what that means, and figure out how I bring my brand proposition to life through these kind of unique digital assets. And that's going to help you be basically part of the club. And if you're part of the club, people talk about you. And then the other really interesting thing there is that for those of us that have teenagers, we're probably all familiar with the platform Discord, right? Which is how teenagers largely communicate with each other today. It got its start in the gaming industry. One guy at CES described Discord as basically the headquarters of the metaverse.
Unfortunately, I fell into an April Fool's Day trap last year when the team at Salsify were in a Slack channel said that they were going to move all of their communications to Discord. And I totally fell for it. And I got to say, Rob Gonzalez, you got me good last year. I'm watching you this year. I'm not falling for that.
They're going to move it all to carrier pigeons.
Oh, my God.
Owls, like from Harry Potter.
But Discord, absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing is that you really can't market in Discord, but you have to figure out a way to communicate. All these platforms, when presented with the lucrative opportunities for advertising, usually cave in. But what Discord's really got is it reminds me a lot actually of the early days of YouTube, like the way that people used to talk about them. You got to be endemic to the creator environment. You can't go in heavy-handed or you'll get roasted. Like this is how we always talk about YouTube 12 years ago, right? So I think there are some learned skills that older people can apply to this world to try to figure out how to bring your brand to life in an authentic way in that type of ecosystem.
So other than the attendance, anything in particular kind of disappointed you about CES? You thought you were going to see something more compelling there, and you thought it was on trend, and it's not quite there yet.
I got to tell you, when we get to the NRF conversation, this will hit as well. I would have thought robotics would be more advanced than they are, to be totally honest. Like the great Irish rock band, we were promised jetpacks. As a view of the future. Look, I think there's some really and again, sometimes I like the really simple applications of things. So there's one business there called Bear Robotics, B-E-A-R. And in food service, they've just built this really simple robot that cruises tables and basically lets you put your dirty plates on it and stuff, and then it takes them away.
So it's not super complex other than it gives you the opportunity to dump your plates. It doesn't try to reach your plate.
So now what you've done is you've just reduced the staffing pressure on the restaurant.
Sure.
You've freed up the wait person who hates doing that.
From a consumer standpoint, I can't stand it when my plate's done and my waiter is ignoring me. And
it also, by the way, runs the food out to you as well. So
that's brilliant.
So you've taken out most of the variability in tipping for a wait person. Actually, isn't the wait person's fault. It comes from the kitchen or the people and the food running. So if you can automate the food running and then free up that person to then be the human face of your brand, and they have them rolled out. I think it was Chili's and. One of the other companies, but that was it's just like a very, very simple piece of robotic technology that it's basically a Roomba with shelves. So
a Roomba, and excellent,
but it's great. It's it makes all the sense in the world.
As long as it cleans the floor as it's going along, I'm happy.
And and I think that one of the things that I know we're starting to see at NRF, we saw some of this today, is some of the robotic technology on the in the fulfillment area, particularly in the micro fulfillment side, that's going to get really interesting. But I think I was surprised at how little. I mean, and maybe the CES is huge. I mean, I've just missed the robot place, but it just didn't seem as though there was a lot of thinking about how to make today's electronics better, and there's a lot of thinking about the metaverse. There wasn't a lot of thinking about what I would call the bridge between those things, which is relatively straightforward innovations that can make people's lives better tomorrow. And maybe some of that's COVID, right? Like everybody's been so focused on the now that the normal 12 to 24 month planning that goes on just hasn't worked as well. And you've got the now and you've got 10 years from now, but there isn't. I think there's an enormous opportunity for a company that wants to fill the strategic gap of what's going to happen 3 years from now. Because I don't think companies have put as much energy into that as they might have.
I think you give retailers too much credit on their long-term planning. Having worked for a publicly traded retailer, I've learned that long-term planning was literally the next annual cycle. That was it.
Oh yeah.
And everything you did was about budgeting for that, and you invested nothing in something that the first dollar of return you got against it or savings you got against it took place in month 13.
Well, that's because you worked in merchandising. But the thing is that when you work in the ops side or the store side, you're the only thing you think about is long-term horizon because you're making 10, 15-year CapEx investments. So I think you're going to see.
So the robotics was you thought you'd see more, you didn't see as much as.
And maybe it's just the 8-year-old boy. Maybe we're going to see more robots.
Fair enough. Well, but generally speaking, will you want to go back to CES again?
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think it was interesting to see once, and I liked the experience of not having 1 million people around it. I think if it were as crowded as people were describing it to me normally, It might not necessarily be my show, just because, given what I do for a living, it may not be exactly where I would where I might spend my, especially given its proximity to NRF, which is now a little bit closer to home. So
great. Okay. Well, let's actually switch to NRF.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So you've this was my first day at the show. It's your second day at the show, yeah. So I would love to hear from you what has intrigued you so far.
What has intrigued me? I thought there were a couple of, I thought some of the presentations were really good. And in particular, and this is a business I just wasn't as familiar with, but shout out to Chewy.com. But if any of you on the podcast listen, I doubt Sumit, the CEO, is a big listener, though maybe he is. If he is, hi.
We have listeners from Chewy.
I know. Well, if you do, your CEO was incredibly impressive, and probably the star of day one, at least as far as I was concerned. I think most people that were just what
are they doing that really caught your attention?
It's just a really coherent vision around where they're going. Two, he had a phrase which that I really love, and I'm not going to get it quite right, because he described 2020 near perfectly for businesses that are trying to use data from that period to figure out, and he called it navigating through a fog through which we could not recognize patterns, or something like that. And it was just a really good description of how silly some of the work people are doing is today around trying to pattern recognize or figure out what new habits people have formed. No, you're not there yet. You have to continue to react and respond. And actually, Brian Cornell was really good on this topic as well. He goes, look, we've got to keep in year 3 all the attributes we had in year 1 and year 2 of agility, flexibility, and responsiveness.
Patterns aren't formed yet.
Yeah, we don't have that
Everything
yet.
is changing. We just go back to December. Everybody thought everything was going to be great, and then
and it's just
meetings are canceled. We're back to living in our houses and working from home. And I think you talk to any CEO of a major company which had, prior to the pandemic, a physical footprint of offices. I think they've just completely given up trying to predict when people are going to go back to the office.
There's just no reason to. I mean, every company I've seen that's tried to mandate that one way or the other has just ended up annoying people, and right now that's not what you want to do.
No, I think that's being. I think it's being. Those decisions are being made by people who have big offices and miss the days when they could go into their big office.
Well, they miss the days when they could make sure people were, quote unquote, make sure.
Yes, they're working. We have to look over them.
Right. Yes, it's management by wandering around. One of my favorite old McKinsey phrases. Yes, it's like McKinsey justifying leaders who don't really do very much. Well done, McKinsey. Well done, as always. But I think, but the other thing I thought that was really interesting about Chewy was their vision around. It's because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, no pun intended. Around
I just got that.
There you go. So around the veterinary services industry and all the work that they're doing, not just to use vets as customers or as referral, but they're actually really investing heavily in reverse engineering the back end systems of veterinary offices and stuff, which is
they're coming with systems to make their business better, and in doing so, they become a supplier of their.
I think there's a decent chance that 5 years from now, people are like, "Wow, that Chewy is the dominant player in pet health." Oh, did you know they sold pet food too? Like, I think that's the scale of the transformation. And I like anybody that can see, hey, I've got a core competency in tech and customer experience. Where in a parallel ecosystem is the technology and the customer experience utterly terrible? Oh, good. The really high margin space that's immediately adjacent to mine. Okay, let's figure out how we monetize.
It's interesting. I think about what CVS has done with their health hubs. They've taken their front of store and low margin, low dollar value items, and they are systematically restructuring their store and reducing that inventory, the assortment, and they're replacing it with high margin services around primary health care.
Some of the margin parts of that aren't right, but
they have to move there. But they're moving in the direction of those kinds of primary health care where they're getting a bigger bang of the buck particularly from insurable. Because they are a healthcare company, right? And they're in that old Southern phrase about breakfast where the chicken's involved and the pig's committed. They're committed to healthcare, right? They're pig committed to healthcare. Yeah, they are.
And as a result, I think when we've been talking to in my old gig at Kantar, when we were talking to suppliers and working with CVS teams and stuff, listen, look, I mean, part of your job here is that the gravitational pull of this business is going to be to turn the non-pharmacy side of the store into the gift shop at a hospital. You've got to figure out how to not have it do that in order to make sure that you've got.
The only challenge for them, or for frankly any pharmacy provider, is are they really committed to outcomes and improving outcomes? Because if they do that, that has an adverse effect on their revenue. They're much more about, there is an incentive for them to provide treatments and not necessarily to improve outcomes through preventative activities.
But if you actually think about it, the business model of an insurance company is that their goal, yes, in the short term they quote make more money, but they really don't actually, because what they're getting paid is kind of, but what they really get paid is premiums, right? So they've got to win B2B accounts to win premiums. The way they win B2B accounts is to manage cost. So that the insurance companies really aren't as interested. It's the hospitals that are interested. The two big economic models in healthcare are the hospitals and the insurance companies, right? Hospitals get paid to treat you. Insurance companies don't. Insurance companies get paid to manage cost.
Right.
And that's the fundamental tension in the American healthcare system is really between that cost model and this one, because I'm using visuals. And for those of you listening, I apologize.
And we just gave our audience in CPG a little lesson on the healthcare industry.
Well, there you go. And that's but I think the big piece there is that the sell for CVS, Aetna, Caremark is all about outcomes, right? That's how they sell. That's how I would sell what we're able to do as a B2B provider, which is really where they make most of their money today. They're mostly a B2B company, even though they're really responsible for consumer experience. Their economics are B2B.
So one of the other things that we talked about today that I know you were very interested in, and I certainly am, is about live streaming and shoppable media. What did you see at NRF that was kind of intriguing?
Well, I think there was a couple of things, look, I mean, you had
Eva Wang
from Firework is the previous guest on this podcast. And look, I think most of you, if you're not familiar with Firework, go learn something about them. They're an incredibly impressive outfit that has really thought through the whole live streaming value equation. So not just movies of people selling stuff, but really the whole infrastructure, the ecosystem, the commerce end, the media targeting that goes with it. I mean, they're really interesting.
And those are big things, like just the thought of being able to implement that on legacy platforms like Shopify and making it a very easy decision for a brand to say, oh, I love where I see shoppable media. Unfortunately, right now it seems to be predominantly in social media platforms. I want that for my brand site. Now I can actually get it without a Herculean effort to implement.
Right. And if you want a quick summary of this, by the way, Firework did a thing for the 1010 Shopping Festival with Coresight Research.
Sure.
So, where they did a whole series of live streams and stuff, and you just go online and look at that, and you can look
we'll put a hyperlink to it in the digital liner notes.
So that's cool. But I think also there were, even just in terms of creating experiences in the digital world that are both engaging and shoppable. It wasn't just live streaming that did that. I mean, there was that it's coming. I think it was Obsess, I think is the name of the agency that was doing flagship stores online. And this is a really interesting idea, which got presented as being part of the metaverse by another company, but in reality is just a very sensible application of digital technology. So if you're Fendi and you launch, this is the example they use, if you're Fendi and you launch your new store in New York and you've put a new flagship store in, but you want to democratize the exclusivity of that flagship store, you can create a digital experience for doing that. Now, by the way, if you combine that with the metaverse and you blockchain the ability to enter that flagship store somehow, or assign status or credibility as a way to do that. So in the same way that Sephora years ago, for their top end shoppers, they didn't give them bonus points. They gave them the opportunity to spend $200 to come to a party called Sephora out in LA. And
great experience.
Yeah, right? And that was, and I think you're going to see the digital ecosystem provides. You could do Sephora anytime you want, right? You don't need a physical asset to do that. You can create an exclusive club. You can sell in, and why wouldn't Fendi host a virtual cocktail party with NFT bags and all this other stuff in their virtual flagship store? I mean, and again, trying to create exclusivity, create scarcity where there is none in the digital world, or prevent fakery, NFTs are really, really good at that.
More NFT creeping into our conversations. I think it's going to be big. One of the other things I know we both took note of was data and analytics, and I think one of the areas that's particularly interesting is around voice.
Right.
What are you seeing? What are you seeing for at NRF around voice capabilities?
I didn't see a lot, to be honest. I think voice is interesting because I think voice shopping. Well, people that know me well know the anecdote that's going to come here. But whether you're British or American, you will decide that self-service grocery retail was invented sometime around 1920 when either Lord David Sainsbury or Piggly Wiggly invented it, because they both invented it about the same time in different places. Since then, humanity has been on a literally 100-year quest to not use their voice when they shop.
Crazy.
And that's literally the entire progression of modern retail is I don't want to speak when I shop. Therefore, I want to use my feet, my eyes, and my hands, which are much better shopping tools than my mouth. So, but there are use cases, typically when my feet, my eyes, and my hands are preoccupied, where voice becomes quite useful. Most obvious one is in the kitchen. If I am making dinner and I realize I am out of flour, and my hands are covered in flour, which I have just run out of, and I cannot hit my phone because I will cover my phone in flour. Voice is a really useful way to do that. So I think voice has some really interesting, very, very specific, and I think if the aggregate, people aren't more interested in using their voice to shop just because Amazon invented some cool technology, right? Or Apple is Siri. You've got to figure out what the use case is, align to that use case, drive that use case, really understand it well, and then get people used to the mechanic of it. And once you're used to the mechanic of it, broaden, which is what Amazon did with books and what NFTs are doing with entertainment and art. And voice just hasn't really done that. Voice tried to get to too many things too quickly, and too many things that just didn't make any sense because nobody in the end wants to have a multi-layered, complex conversation with a voice assistant. They just don't.
So one of the companies that we saw while we were there today was in the voice space, but it wasn't so much about the shopping experience, it was about the customer service aspect.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this company, Rolla, because that's very interesting.
So
People
cool.
are having conversations in physical stores, and what they've built is a software that actually is basically like a little listening device.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that they will hear conversations that are going on between the sales rep at, say, your favorite phone store and cellular provider, and the consumer, and their goal is to be able to analyze what it is they're talking about and to be able to diagnose what are the key issues that are happening in these physical sales interactions so that they can build solutions that predict what's going to happen and give those people the tools they need to address the issues of the shopper that they're expressing to them. So a really fascinating approach.
Yeah, this interaction will be recorded for quality assurance, and that's exactly what it is.
But it's actually doing some quality. It's not just quality assurance.
Yeah.
It's not making sure you didn't swear at the customer. It's trying to say, how do I solve their problem and scale that?
Well, I think the implications of that technology, in addition to being marginally weird, are also that. Yes, you will be able to. It's not an enormous leap for a piece of technology to be voice prompted in the same way that you've got a chatbot now, right? You could chatbot the customer interaction so that you're holding an iPad and instead of having to scroll through it, all the iPad's doing is listening to you, knows the customer you're talking to because it's already talked to their phone. And then as you have a fairly normal human conversation, it's guiding you through what that person can do, right?
That is fascinating.
There's an enormous amount of upside for that in higher touch selling environments, but immediately people think, well, it's a high touch selling environment. The Burberry associate doesn't need that. It's like that's not well, no, but the Verizon one does, or that's.
I don't need that in a grocery store. I do need it in an consumer electronics.
There are a lot of high touch, low quality shopping experiences in the world that this I think could be that technology could be really powerful.
So that was good. Anything that you thought was missing from You made reference earlier that you thought there wasn't as much robotics as you expected.
Maybe more. No, there were more robots here actually than there were at CES, okay. Which makes sense, I think, to some degree. I think, and it's always hard. It's really hard to tell this time because I think at this show it was harder to sort out what should have been here from what was here. It was just the sheer amount of physical space dedicated to tables, like without booths in them where people were supposed to be. So I think it's hard to get a read. I think a lot of the companies that are more analytically centered probably weren't here. So, and that was, but I think a lot of that's pandemic related. I don't think that's anything.
Yeah, I did feel like I went back a little in time. I don't know if it was by Hot Tub or DeLorean.
Yeah, well, you're a more veteran of this show than me, so you probably got a better perspective on this.
Yeah, no, I insofar as I saw the presentation of one retailer talking about their customer insights platform, and I felt like I was sitting in a dunnhumby presentation from 2004 in terms of what they were trying to showcase as being cutting edge. I thought it was cutting edge 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But so I think
it's a Ginsu; it never dulls.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to pawn that off as something revolutionary, I think they need to go back to the drawing board and try and actually deliver something that is substantially more impressive than basket affinities.
Right.
That's block and tackling for category management, but there's so much more that can be done. Like, I think source of conversion was probably the only thing I saw.
Yes.
Among those, among all the analytic capabilities of that package, but I said, okay, that's a little different because now I can understand where they came from in the customer journey because they're mapping that on the digital click-through process.
Yeah, and when you learned what headless commerce was, that was fun, right?
Headless commerce was a really interesting one. So this is about trying to say, agnostic to what your marketing stack is, it can help enable the building of the front end to deliver all the data points to the front end. So I think the way you described it is that so the engineers don't have to talk to the IT people.
No, it's the marketing people.
Pardon me, the marketing people don't have to talk to the IT people. That was, so headless commerce, no, it is not from Terrytown, New York. It doesn't involve a guy named Ichabod.
Right.
But I'd never heard what that was, and that was really fascinating to me to say, hey, we've built kind of a middleware layer that is going to enable you to create the great front end you want as a marketer. And you don't have to worry about do you have the right elements of the marketing tech stack underlying. This basically bridges that gap. Did I get it right?
You did, and then there's companies that act as middleware again between the head and the body, basically the neck, that can run analytics across the variety of body parts you've chosen and the variety of heads that you've chosen, and aggregate that into one series of insights so that you know what's happening. And look, I mean, I think in the end, there are so many brands that are trying to make their way into direct-to-consumer to, quote, get first-party data. Yeah. Here's my plea to you. Do not adapt a direct-to-consumer model if your reason for doing that is we need to acquire first-party data, because you will build something. You will not acquire any first-party data because no one will come to your site unless you have a purpose for it that goes beyond the acquisition of data. You have to think about what the consumer needs for it. Do that, and then acquire the first-party data as a result.
Yeah, there are other places you can easily acquire first-party data. I'm trying to think of a name.
Peter, as I said, I get better every time. I don't promote your competitors anymore.
Did I
accident?
Did I mention that we're recording this inside the Fetch Rewards office?
Right. If only there was some company with 14 million users that does all this stuff.
We're only 13, but we're getting there. We're getting to 14.
I was told 14 before.
Well, you know what? Maybe it is.
Your PR is ahead of you.
I am not. I'm not keeping track fast enough.
Yes,
but anyway, no, but you're right. I think you're right. If you're doing it just to think you're going to get the 1P data,
right.
There are so many better things you can do with your resources and just source that data.
Well, it's just not going to work. I mean,
no,
that
not at scale.
Not at all. I mean, you're going to get one person's first-party data.
There you go.
Yeah, the brother of the person in the marketing department who built it. I mean, that's really it. I mean, there's got to be a real, actual consumer. Start with the idea that we've got a real consumer problem that needs solving, a real consumer need, or a real desire for the consumer to engage with the brand beyond how they can engage with it in ordinary ecosystems. Yeah. And then you've got something from which you can acquire first-party data. But I've just watched too many companies spend too much money trying to acquire first-party data when literally they would be better off buying it from you guys, and not worrying about where it came from, and just
Though I do want to thank Mondelez for creating the design your own Oreo cookie D2C site. You can have my 1P data all day long. Being able to put an image and sprinkles and dip it the way I want and send that out to people. Great. Oh, it's beautiful.
Oreos.
I know.
It's very good. So,
how can you not love this? Okay, anyway, sorry. But I digress.
We love all the cookie companies.
All the cookie companies.
Yeah, trust me, we do. So, right.
I love them way too much in my life, Bryan.
I could stand up. You would see how much I love the cookie companies. So.
Any other thoughts on NRF before we kind of close out this episode?
Look, I mean, I think it's it's great to see you in person, because I'm not even sure the last time that ever happened. So, and also just and I think it is, you realize how much you miss the serendipity of human interaction that's just not replicable in the Zoom world. And the somebody from it was actually the woman was saying about the metaverse the other day, said that human interactions were designed to think in 3D, and that's just because that's the world we live in, and that 2D is always a sort of artificial construct to some degree, and just being in a 3-dimensional space with 3-dimensional people and experiencing things in an environment. We discovered headless commerce by following a crowd, right? And the crowd wasn't actually looking at the headless commerce thing, but we wanted.
There was a little stop in the traffic, and I turned right and I said, "What's headless commerce?" Right, like, let's find out. So that was. So I think there's just no substitute for that, and it will be a great day when we can do that again without the fear of a pandemic. That'll be fantastic. So I want to thank our special guest today, Bryan Gildenberg from Omnicom Commerce Group, for providing us some feedback on a number of big trade shows that have happened in January. Got more coming up later this year. I'm sure we'll have you back for some other conversation, but it was great just throwing this around and ideating and having this conversation. You're always welcome on the podcast.
Always good to be here. And Shri, we need you here, man.
Shri,
we'll need a markedly bigger phone if we're going to do
this. Yes, or we're going to have to put it further back.
Which probably would have been a good idea.
That would have been helpful, I know. As Shri likes to say, I've got the velvet voice and the radio face.
Yes, that's
Anyhow, so to our audience, thanks for joining us on this special trade show episode of the CPG Guys podcast. We look forward to speaking with you on the next episode. Take care. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.